Hello again. Today it is the year 2025 still, but we are going to be going over my top books of 2025. And this year was a great year. Far better than last year, I would say. I read a lot of supremely good books. 32 to be exact, which is another new record. I think that's a new record by 6 over last year. So let's get right into it. Starting with some books that I did not like, the bottom tier. We have Midnight Horizon. Do not read this book. This is the worst written book I have read in my life. It is labeled as young adult, but this is a book for children. It has the generic High Republic plot, the most generic out of any of them. And Ram, the character, not interesting at all. And then I want to talk about the security guard plot, because what's going on? There's like a ton of security guards for this very popular pop singer, and then she wants to become a security guard. She is a security guard? What's going on? This book is bad. Also in this tier is Temptation of the Force, the worst High Republic mainline book, I would say. Then we have the mid tier. There's a lot of books in the mid tier. These are books I gave like 3 stars, I think. I finished the High Republic this year, and that's a lot of this tier, to be honest. First up is Tempest Breaker. I'm not the biggest fan of the audio dramas, but the one thing I liked about Tempest Breaker was that Tanalorr was mentioned. I listened to that book exclusively to hear Tanalorr, and it was literally just a throw-in line. I thought I was getting some lore here. We got some The Light Fantastic right here. That one was okay. It was just a continuation of The Color of Magic, essentially, and rated pretty similar by me. Not my favorite Pratchett. And then, of course, I have the young adult from Phase 3 of the High Republic. We have Into the Light, Tears of the Nameless, and Defy the Storm. Actually, it's the other way around. I expected more out of Tears of the Nameless. I really wanted some lore on the Nameless, but we didn't really get much in this book, and I expected to. Defy the Storm, I actually liked more than I thought I would. And Into the Light was pretty decent. Okay, I was going to go through this in order, but I realized it really just makes sense to do this by series. So I'll go through the rest of the High Republic here. I read all 3 of... I finished the High Republic. It finished this year. I read these 3. Eye of Darkness was okay. I already talked about Temptation of the Force being not good, but Trials of the Jedi was in the top 20. Trials of the Jedi was very, very good. I expected some more lore on the Blight, but we didn't really get much of that. But I really loved Elzar and Avar in this book. That was one of my biggest complaints of this book, was that we did not get enough or good Elzar and Avar. In this book, it drastically improves on that and has a really, really good ending. I listened to Project Hail Mary this year. I think this book is wildly overrated. The main character, Rylan Grace, I do not like him at all. He's a serial whiner and is somehow good at everything, like every practical science. It's very hard science fiction. Some of the elements I liked, but overall, not my favorite. The last book I listened to this year was Red Rising. Another one that's probably slightly overrated in my book, but it has a fun story. Darrow did annoy me at points, and I'm not the biggest science fiction fan, as I have stated, so it wasn't top tier. I pretty much only listened to it because it was free. Now that I've started, I have to finish the series, so I'll definitely be finishing that one. Maybe next year, maybe not, because as I said, I wasn't in love with Red Rising. So those were the books I listened to this year. The only history book I read this year was Band of Brothers. Obviously, this is the book that the TV series was adapted from. I definitely prefer the TV series. I wasn't the biggest fan of Stephen Ambrose's writing, but you do get some nice background info and some fun stories from that weren't in the show. And it is crazy to think that all of that did happen. Like, most of what's in the show is in the book, and most of what's in the book did actually happen, which to me is insane. Now we'll be moving on to Joe Abercrombie. I finished all of The First Law this year, and let's just say it is so much better than the first trilogy. So I, of course, finished the standalones. I mentioned last year how I love the heroes, but I finished Red Country. That one is good. It's a fun Western. Some of the pacing at points was a bit weird to me. Like, it would jump time and then slow down time. Sharp Ends was a fun collection of short stories. And then we move on to Age of Madness. And let me tell you, this here is a perfect trilogy. Oh my goodness. The themes in this are masterful. Like, I have not read a fantasy series with more prevalent and interesting themes of government and revolution and all of the above. But it has this, but it's not like overly like in your face. Like it's so naturally woven into the story. The characters, once again, they're just good. It makes you cheer for characters and hate characters that are essentially the same. Like everybody loves Savine, but everybody hates Leo. But how different are they? Really, they're not that different. I mean, Orso is the goat, and there's nothing to say for that. Like he just is. And there's so many twists and turns. You don't know where it's going to end up. By the end of the Wisdom of Crowds, that one was probably my favorite of the three. But they're all 5 stars for me. Wisdom of Crowds. Next up, this is actually at the beginning of the year. I read A Song of Ice and Fire. I watched Game of Thrones in September of last year, 2024. Binged it in about a month. So I was so excited to read these. I wasn't planning on doing it this year, but it just kind of popped up and I'm like, you know what? These covers came out and I might say they are extremely good. We know what A Song of Ice and Fire is about. The twists, the turns, the deaths, the political intrigue of the series. To nobody's surprise, my favorite is Storm of Swords. I love the first 2 as well. I think the 4th one is really good. I'm just missing some of my favorite characters because it's split. And the 5th one definitely is dragged down. There are some Daenerys chapters where nothing happens. And I do like some of the stuff that are in these final 2 books that are not even come close to touched in the show. But I do have some hot takes when it comes to A Song of Ice and Fire standalones. First hot take. This was my favorite book I read this year. Fire and Blood. It's a history book. It's a fake history book. How can this be your favorite? There's not any characters. There's not any plot. It is just a guy telling a fake history of the Targaryen dynasty. And this is so good. How can this book have the most emotional moment out of any book I have read this year? I don't know, but it does. Jaehaerys and Alysanne's part in this book, which is the majority of the book, is so good. And we all know the House of the Dragon stuff. Near the end of this book, it's also another 200 to 300 pages. That's also going to be good. My least favorite part of the book was the end with Aegon III. I thought we were going to get his whole reign, but we didn't. We just got like before his reign. So that was a bit disappointing to me. I secretly want Fire and Blood 2, Blood and Fire, before Winds of Winter. Don't tell anybody that. And the other standalone, Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I think this is my favorite collection of short stories. This is probably better, definitely better than the last 2, the Song of Ice and Fire books, and is equal with the first 2 for me. I just love the short stories. Dunk and Egg, goated. I read Piranesi. I rented this one from my school library, so I don't have it. But this one's great. A fun, like, fantasy, but also mystery, and also a bit of horror here. Mainly a mystery, I would say, and fantasy. But there is some horror elements. I don't read horror. This definitely had some for me, at least. A page turner. This was great to read in between the Song of Ice and Fire books because I finished it in like a couple days. I didn't latch on to some of the fantastical elements, but overall this one was so good. How could I forget the Bloodsworn Saga? I mean, these covers, first of all, let's just mention that, are probably some of my favorite covers out of any book ever. I love the Nordic themes of these books. Shadow of the Gods was good. Hunger of the Gods was my favorite. There's a really emotional moment at the end of this one that's like sad, and I feel like this book kind of went down a bit. I'm not the biggest fan of action in general, but this series has a ton of it. I love the Nordic world building. I do feel like it's kind of empty sometimes, which it's supposed to be, but yeah, the Nordic world building is great. I'd say my favorite is Hunger of the Gods Book 2. In what world is Book 2 ever your favorite? Book 3 was also a good ending. Definitely super high paced. Like if you're looking for something that is high paced, these final 2 books are it for you. I read Men at Arms and Feet of Clay, books 2 and 3 of the City Watch of Discworld, and these drastically improve upon the first. This book is so close to being in my top 5, Men at Arms. The way this expands on the City Watch, adds new characters, they're on the cover, the dwarf, the werewolf, and the troll, make this series so much better. Be a man in the City Watch. The City Watch needs men. Terry Pratchett, just like Joe Abercrombie does, as I said earlier, manages to weave these themes in while not feeling too in your face. This book is really about affirmative action, but you would never think about that. Feet of Clay, great continuation of Men at Arms. I wouldn't say it's as up there for me, but adds some more characters that are great. The Golem, Cherry. I think it's Cheery actually. Two great characters added in Feet of Clay. And I must say those Discworld covers are fire as well. There are a lot of fire covers up here. Lastly, this is the last thing I read this year, was The Will of the Many. I'm currently reading The Strength of the Few, but The Will of the Many is up there. Like, it's fantasy Red Rising, but it's a lot better than Red Rising. World building elements of this book took me back to when I read, like, The Wheel of Time and Stormlight Archive for the first time. Just, I love the history of the world. I don't have it with me right now because my mom's reading it, so there's that. Strength of the Few, I'm currently halfway through, I'd say. It's not as good, but I still like it. Like, I think some of the qualms people have with The Strength of the Few are unbased because they like the will. If you like The Will of the Many, The Strength of the Few is very, very similar, except for one major element, which is the perspectives. But The Will of the Many is up there for me. Like, people's complaints with The Strength of the Few and The Will of the Many is that Vis is overpowered and that he's just good at everything, which, to be fair, is true. Like, you get that when you're reading, but sometimes it's okay. And if it's done well, then it's fine. And this book is definitely done well. This one is up there. So, in the end, I will list my top 10 books. 10, Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. 9, 8, and 7 are A Clash of the Kings, Game of Thrones, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R. R. Martin, respectively. 6 is Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett. 5, Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie. 4, A Storm of Swords by George R. R. Martin. 3, The Will of the Many by James Islington. 2, The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. And number 1, Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin. Thank you for watching. Next year, I don't know how many books I'll read, but when I get back into the swing of things, I plan to read Dandelion Dynasty and then get into a fantasy epic. I'm thinking Malazan. It might be time to read Gardens of the Moon, or I might reread Wheel of Time, depending on how I'm feeling. So thank you for watching. Tune in next year when we go over the top books of 2026, but this has been the top books of 2025.